two people in Britain today who've been at the forefront of not saying what a woman is. One is Nicola Sturgeon, the ex-First Minister of Scotland, who lost her job because of this ridiculous farce of a rapist self-identifying. She tweeted today, proud on International Women's Day to visit my old University of Glasgow, and banged on about women's rights. This is the woman who just literally lost her job for allowing a male rapist into a female prison. And Sir Keir Starmer, who's leader of the opposition Labour Party here, was talking about protections for women in Parliament today, and yet he refuses to say what a woman is. Where are we with this? How has it come that leaders of parties in countries like the UK, and we see a lot of it in America as well, just won't say what a woman is?
Well, first of all, I have to apologize to you because all of this wokeness originates here in the United States of America, and then we export it to you in the UK.
Yes, you're to blame.
So we started this really in America. Yes, we are. You know, the wokeness starts here, and then it, of course, moves over, and now you guys have to deal with it. The world has to deal with it. But I say this, I'm proud to celebrate International Women's Day because I know what a woman is. So I would say if you don't know what a woman is, you don't get to celebrate it. You don't get to pretend to be a feminist when it's helpful to you or helpful to your political narrative. You have to be able to define what a woman is. This is all a farce. They are seeking to erase women, and this is the radical rainbow mafia, as I call it. This is not your average LGBT activist. This is the rainbow mafia section of that radical LGBTQ movement that has made women less than, and then has elevated all of this transgenderism and all of this pick your gender, identify as potato. They have hijacked the women's rights movement, the feminist movement, and actual feminists should be really pissed off about it.
Well, as a feminist, I am. I recently interviewed Angelica, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, and I asked him this question, which seems to stump many other leaders. Here's the clip. What is a woman? We know that Nicola Sturgeon can't answer that. We know Keir Starmer can't answer that. You're the British Prime Minister. What is a woman?
Yeah, of course I know what a woman is. Adult human female.
It's not difficult, is it, Angelica? I mean, that is what a woman is.
I mean, I don't know why you're obsessed with defining it. Like, what is a man? Like, why do we need these arbitrary...
A man is a male, adult human. I mean, that's it.
Right, OK. I don't know that we need
these are just biological facts, but they're just facts. They're not arguable points, are they?
But I think we have a right to self-identify. And you said you want to...
As what?
If you'd like to be a woman, you can identify as a woman. I don't know why there is such an issue around...
We've literally just seen a male rapist use that scam to get himself put into a female prison where he could attack vulnerable women inside a female prison, when even his ex-wife said it was all a scam.
Which is a terrible, very distressing, isolated incident. And I think it's easy to take that and say that means that no one can identify as a woman.
But
and
it's not an isolated incident, though.
But it's
42% of trans-identifying prisoners in prison are in there for sex crimes. There's actually an advantage, evidently, to identifying as a female, because they never identify as male, because somehow male prisons seem less appealing to them. It's really weird. Anyway, but
is it limitless, this self-identity?
It's not totally limitless.
What's the limit?
When you're talking about International Women's Day, I don't know why we take the conversation around International Women's Day and make it about this.
But if anyone...
There's so many benefits.
Right, but if anyone, according
to
to you, can identify as a woman, anyone can, right?
I don't see a problem with...
Just literally put the hand up and say, I'm a woman.
But it's not an easy thing to do, to go out into
Actually,
the world.
It's very easy.
Very easy.
You might think it's easy to say, but to decide to do that, to say...
What does doing it involve?
Whatever that person decides, but to go out into the world and say, I don't identify as perhaps the sex I was born as...
So why can't I identify... OK, why can't I identify as a black lesbian?
Well, firstly, I mean, it was...
Well, I'm serious. If I can identify as anything without any need to prove I'm actually what that is, why can't I, on International Women's Day, say, I'm Piers Morgan, I'm a black lesbian?
I think taking it to a kind of absurd status...
I think that's what...
about quite a
with
strong
respect, I think that
change.
you'd already opened the absurdity door by saying it is limitless. You can do what you like. Anyone can say, I'm a woman. So I simply ask you, why can't I?
I mean, this point kind of ridicules trans people to an extent.
Actually, I think what you said ridicules trans people, because actually people who go through the full process of transition, who actually go through what we used to call a sex change, which I don't think you can muck around with original biology, but those who actually go through surgical procedure over a number of years, I've got great respect for that very difficult journey they go on. I have zero respect for people who just wallop their hand up and go, suddenly, I'm a woman and I want all the rights that a woman has, and I want to compete, say, in sport. I'm a 6'4" athlete, sprinter, swimmer, whatever, who's competed very mediocrely in male sport. I now want to come in and crush women in swimming pools and in sprinting events and break all their records, perhaps irrevocably, just by saying, I'm a woman. I think that is the absurdity you were talking about. My response was to say, well, if it's limitless, why can't I then say whatever I want to say? And you say immediately, as I knew you would, well, that's ridiculous. But my point is, you were being ridiculous.
Well, that's your opinion. You can think I'm ridiculous, but I don't think you can say, well, it has to...
I don't know why I am, but you're not.
I don't think you have to say it's post-op is the only way that someone's allowed to identify as trans.
The original standard
the
original standard for being transgender was being diagnosed with gender dysphoria, which is a legitimate condition. And now it's being, however way you feel. So if you feel on Tuesday you're a woman and on Thursday you're a pizza, that's perfectly valid. But to you, that's ridiculous. And I want to know why that is ridiculous. We should be talking about actual women on International Women's Day. That's not crazy.
I mean, I agree. But your idea of an actual woman...
chromosomes.
It's an adult female. It's not difficult.
The chromosomes are a pretty good indication.
I don't think you have to be biologically female to identify
Then
as a
you are
woman.
wrong, because then I can identify as a fox.
Yeah.
But again, it's a kind of absurd point.
How many? Well, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, Angelica. How many genders are there?
2.
There are 2 genders.
Oh.
Wow. So you don't believe in transgenders at all?
Well, I think there are...
Well, hang on. Whoa. There are 2 genders.
Well, it's taught in...
Well, you say, well, you've literally just launched this huge defence of transgenderism. Now you've eradicated it.
I think
If there are 2 genders, you mean male and female, right?
There's gender fluidity. I will...
Fluid between what?
Between what?
Between different identities, and we can choose different
You
identities.
see how difficult this is, though?
But it is difficult, but I think making...
But it's not difficult until you make it difficult. You see, the BBC has done teaching videos to 11 and 12-year-olds where they say there are 100 genders. One of them was astrogender, which is an affinity with the stars and the galaxy. My response to that on the last show I did was to say, well, in that case, I identify as a 2-spirit penguin. I was then told I was being ridiculous, but I made the same point. The ridiculousness is the BBC teaching kids there are 100 genders. There aren't. It is absurd. Bring back Tommy Laren, who I imagine is hyperventilating over there in America. Tommy, I mean, look, I don't see why, if it's limitless, I can't just say, I'm Piers Morgan, I'm a black lesbian. Because that is where limitless self-identity takes us. It means that male rapists can say they're women and get into female prisons. It means I can say I'm a 2-spirit penguin or a black lesbian, and why can't I? Because that is where it takes you.
Well, it certainly does, and I think you just had the perfect argument there. It's impossible to define, and it's impossible to stand up for, because it's a mockery of what actual people are. And furthermore, going back to children, when this happens at a young age, when you start trying to convince kids that they don't know what gender they are, or they're born in the wrong body at 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, that's child abuse. All right? Gender-affirming care, wherein you only tell somebody they can be whatever they want to be, regardless of their biology at a young age, that is child abuse. It's happening in the UK, it's happening in the US, and this is making room for groomers to groom young people, to confuse the heck out of them, make them not know what they are, so that they can take advantage and exploit them. Now, I want to be very clear here. This is not the mainstream LGBTQ movement. There are a lot of conservatives that even support that movement. This is a radical agenda made by groomers, and they don't want you to call them groomers, which is a perfect example of why they are groomers. This is what we're doing, is to confuse young people, to confuse all people, to make them dumber, make them confused as to what they are. It's a mockery of women's rights. It's a mockery of human rights.
Yeah.
And we should no longer be having the
discussion. And you end up with scandals like the Tavistock Clinic here in London, in the UK, where they were basically mutilating children, young, kids, teenagers, mutilating their bodies irrevocably. And then it turned out, after it closed, after a scandalous report came out, that 97% of all the patients had other conditions, from autism to depression to other issues, which may have been affecting their ability to think straight about what they wanted to be. And that was, to me, as a father of 4 kids, utterly horrific, just horrific. This was going on, and anyone who tried to raise concerns about this, and journalists did, were immediately branded transphobic. And Esther, this comes back to what we see with, people like J.K. Rowling, I'm no friend of J.K. Rowling. She can't stand me, and I don't like her, right? It's like fire and water. But on this issue, I've not seen a word she said that is transphobic. I've just heard her go, I want to support and protect women's rights. For that, she's been unbelievably hounded, abused, attempts to cancel, which fortunately have backfired. But it's all wrong, this, isn't it?
The thing is, and one of the shocking things that she's been attacked for is for drawing attention to domestic violence and violence against women. And that's actually the biggest point here. Other than the fact that, you know, that male rapist was allowed to go into a female prison in Scotland, there's a genuine danger around allowing men into women's spaces, like women's shelters and things like that, and they can be there just by identifying as a woman and then identifying as a tree the next day.
Right, so Angelica, do you understand that part of the argument?
I understand that kind of the argument, but I mean, like Tommy said, I don't think this is confusing for children. I think it's giving you freedom of expression and freedom of choice.
But how many girls did you know? Like my wife was a bit of a tomboy when she was young, right? How many kids do you know, young girls in particular, who are tomboys? But if the wrong person gets hold of them and persuades them, actually, what you should start doing is mutilating your body and have a full attempt to become a boy, that's not what most tomboys end up wanting. They end up actually going through puberty, getting older, and then that's it. They become women. Right? But if you get hold of these impressionable young minds too early, when they're just clowning around being tomboys, that's the danger to me.
I don't think the messaging is as extreme as you think it is, and I think we
Tavistock Clinic was pretty extreme.
I think we whip ourselves into a frenzy thinking these things, and this language that you mentioned at the start of the show, I don't think you hear that language used that often in like everyday speech.
Which language?
And I think what you were saying.
Oh no, these are on NHS websites. No, this is where you're wrong. This is actually NHS websites in many cases. They genuinely call women chest feeders, birthing partners. They dare not say anything gender specific to women in case some trans people don't like it. To which I say, where are the rights of women to be called what they want to be called? Why does all language have to be degendered for a tiny minority of people?
I think the problem is there's so much fear around having these kind of conversations and saying the wrong thing, getting it wrong. That means that people can't have conversations that feel kind of progressive about what is gender identity, what does the future look like, how do we create a compassionate space? So I think to your question at the start, like what is women and why politicians wouldn't answer it, they're so scared of getting it wrong. And
well, people are scared because the mob come for them.
Yeah. Exactly.
And the mob needs to just go away and shut up. Anyway, I think scrap International Women's Day until we can all agree what a woman is.
No, I'm sorry. I think there's so many benefits to having International Women's Day. It'd be a real shame to do that.
Well, if you had your way, everyone would celebrate it by identifying as a woman, even if they weren't.
Well, being a woman.
Happy International Women's Day. I am a woman. It's a farce. Anyway, Angelica, lovely to see you. Thank you very much. Esther, going to see you a bit later on. Tommy, always good to have you over at the pond. International Women's Day. There you are. A fine example of a genuine woman. Correct?
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Identify as a woman. I am a woman. And that's how this thing works, ladies and gentlemen.
Exactly. Thank you, Tommy Leroux.